I'm sorry? Okay, welcome everybody. Glad everybody's here today. Starting a few minutes late, but that's all right. We can get going. So today we're actually going to be doing some very interesting stuff. You know, we're going to be looking at Judah. And one of the interesting things about this is that it's very much similar. What they're going to be going through right now is very similar to what we're going through in America right now. Really bad stuff has been happening. People come in and try to make changes, but unfortunately the changes don't last very long. So things may look good, but if we look at the same thing we're looking at back in Judah during this time, we're going to find that although they tried to come in and make some changes, all the bad that has been going on for the very long time is just going to get worse because it doesn't ever change. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. And so I have, ever since I've been really studying the kings and the prophets, come to realize that we are so much like what we have today. That's why I like the Old Testament, because it's history. Helps us to understand what we're going through today. We see that there may be really good stuff happening over the last year or so, but all the bad stuff that started is most likely going to remain afterwards. And we're going to get into that today. So we're going to be talking about some a good king and a very bad king before we get into Zephaniah and Habakkuk. I have to say Habakkuk is one of my favorite prophetic books because it is definitely an interesting book. This guy actually cries out to God and said, God, what in the heck are you allowing to happen in this place? Why are you allowing all this stuff? And God had a very, 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 very good message for him. So let's go into that. All right. We're going to be talking about what led up to the destruction of Judah. Okay? From this point, it's only going to be around 30 years before Judah is wiped out. Remember what I said about the book prophets. Once the book prophets come in, usually that means that it's about bad things are going to happen. Before that, remember, we had Elijah and Elisha. We had some of these other prophets who God used mightily with miracles and all these things. But now it's time for, we got to deal with you guys. So this begins about 700 years after they get into the land. So that's why I kind of said you can kind of think about, does God have the right to bring judgment on people? Well, you make the decision after we go through this today, if he had the right. Okay? So, let's talk about Manasseh. Manasseh is basically Judah's most evil king. He was terrible. He reigned for about 55 years. That's one problem. Because if you got someone bad, they ain't going away. And they're going to continue to be bad, and they're going to continue to do things. This guy, he played all the bad stuff. He was actually the child of Hezekiah, which is one of Judah's one of two really, really good kings. Hezekiah and Josiah. But in between, we have Manasseh, 55 years. So Manasseh really played the Assyrian thing really well. Assyria was on its heyday. Ashurbanipal was in there as Assyrian leader. Manasseh was definitely playing up to them. Granted, I don't blame him in a sense because you didn't want these guys, like we read last week about Assyria, you didn't want them to be on your bad side. You don't want to be on their bad side. So, but you know, the best way to describe is not going through, might help if I do this. I'm sorry, I'm doing right here. I gotta stop doing that. Sorry. The best way to describe this is an article I read a while ago from the Jerusalem Post. Instead of going to the Bible version of which is very long, okay, the version we're going through Manasseh and then Josiah is huge. And I highly recommend you guys reading it because it's really going to give you a good understanding. Now, I warn you, make sure when you read it you have a good commentary, like the IVP or something like that, because, oh, by the way, I think I figured out what IVP means. It's InterVarsity Press. I didn't know that before, but I just figured it out after a few years. So the thing is, have a good commentary, because when they describe certain things going on, you're gonna have kind of an understanding of what they're doing with all of this. All right, so let's kind of see. This guy basically was this guy wrote this thing in Jerusalem Post, and he was overlooking a particular area, remembering Manasseh, the king Manasseh. And I think it goes down a little bit. It says, I think Manasseh and the horrific atrocities he committed in the area before my eyes. He's looking down to this place where Manasseh did a lot of his bad stuff. The longest reigning of all Hebrew kings, even though Manasseh had one of the godliest fathers in history, Hezekiah, Manasseh was Judah's worst king. That's bad. So you got to remember, Judah, they both had 20 kings. Manasseh was the worst of the 20 kings post-split. He lived just like the godless nation God destroyed in bringing Israel to the land. And in the Bible, that's exactly what it says. He said they were just like the Amorites. The Amorites were the guys that God deposed in the beginning. So when Israel got into the land, people who were there were all considered Amorites. Now, granted, they're all Ite brothers because they're the Canaanites, Perizzites, blah, 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 Ites. All the Ite brothers. It's a joke. Anyway, so bringing him into the land. He adopted a pagan worldview, which is true because he hooked up with Assyria. Idolatry, astrology, child sacrifice, witchcraft, sorcery. The sin here is very specific, and it literally comes from Deuteronomy 18. Now, by the way, it also comes from, if I remember right, Leviticus 17 and 18. Because in Leviticus, God basically, that was more of the sexual sins, but they also describe a lot of this. So what it says is that God was talking to the Israelites back in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, were saying God was talking about all the bad stuff that the current occupants were doing. They were really bad. So basically, Israel come in, God says, this is what they're going to be like, beware. Now, interestingly enough, if you read that and then you go and read about Manasseh, you're going to find that he went right along with everybody. And God even said he's just like the Amorites. That's not a good thing. He made his son pass through the fire. Remember in polytheism, Moloch. Manasseh killed his kid in the fire. Burned his kid. Sacrifice. It was the goal was to sacrifice it to the god Moloch for favor. Hey, kill your kid, give it to Moloch, and he'll give you favor. One of the Moabite kings did the same thing. God absolutely said that. Now, it's interesting what God says, because it says, he used witchcraft, divination, sorcery with mediums and spiritualists. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. This is a direct quote from Chronicles. By the way, remember when you read Kings is mostly about Israel, a little bit about Judah. Chronicles is almost exclusively about Judah. But they give the same, very similar information. It is impossible to know why Manasseh sought to break God's law with such passion, which he did. And again, I recommend you go into reading it. We just don't have time because it's long. Hezekiah had sought to keep it. Manasseh rebuilt the high places. And what he's going to do is he's actually going to build altars inside God's temple. So God built the temple. We have the temple. They're going to build altars to other gods inside the temple. Now, what's going to be striking is next week when we go through Hezekiah, when God is actually going to leave the temple. It's a huge thing about God leaving, and it was, every time I read that, I'm just like, oh, God's leaving. And he left because it was so bad. Anyway, and that's just only really about 20 years down the road. Anyway, in a literal sense, he rebuilt what Hezekiah tore down. Look at how this is what Jeremiah said. And they have built the high places, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command. And God even said this, which did not even come to my mind. Basically, God's like, I would never even thought about burning my kid up. But they did. So, after 55 years, his son, King Ammon, came on, did the exact same thing. Ammon was 22 years old. He reigned for 2 years. Now, this is a big thing what happened in Israel. Israel, they had kings that only lasted a short period of time because they would go and kill them. And that's what happened here. He followed completely the ways of his father, worshiping the idols his father had worshipped, bowing down to them. Basically did the same thing Manasseh did. Ammon's officials conspired against him and assassinated the king. Truly, guys, this is probably was a coup. Military leaders raise up, hey, we don't like this guy, we're going to become king, and they destroyed him. But the people didn't like that too much, and so what the people did is went back and killed all the people that killed Ammon. Now, this is how bad the things got. Isn't this sound like our politicians today? I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you, I'm going after you, you're going to go after here. I mean, just constantly after each other. That's what very similar what it was. These guys were all politicians in a sense. They did really bad stuff to each other. But in the midst, after he was killed, we have Josiah. Josiah is now born into this. He was 8 years old when he came to being. Now, we got to remember, Judah is really, really bad right now. But luckily, Josiah had some good people raising him. Okay? And that started him off right. He reigned for 31 years. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, following completely the ways of his father, David. So when they say your father's Jeroboam, that's bad. When they say your father's David, that's good. Okay? You're going to see that. So whenever it's Jeroboam, you don't want to be that guy. You want to be like your father David. Not turning aside to the right or the left. Now, here's the problem. Around 15 years, actually 18 years into Josiah's reign. He reigned for 31 years. 18 years later, they found the Bible, the book of the law. It was lost. 70 years. It was around 70 years. What most likely happened is Manasseh tried to destroy all the works. Get rid of God, get rid of his word, get rid of everything. So what they had to do is they hid the book of the law. Someone hid the book of the law a long time ago in this nook or cranny, whatever, in the temple. And Josiah says, go fix the temple, clean it up. And in the process of doing so, they found the book of the law. See, the problem was, without the book of the law, they did not know how God was supposed to reform the people. See, we know the Bible today. We have it, we memorize it, we read it all the time. Just think if you didn't have it for 70 years. Nobody had it. That's how bad it was. So these guys, the problem is he didn't know what to do. So the first 18 years he wanted reform, but how do you reform what you don't know what to reform? They just know that we're not worshiping God right. That's all they knew. But when they found the book of the law, that things changed. But see, this is what happens when we don't read the Bible. We lose touch with what God wants from us. How do you live a righteous life for God without knowing how to do it? As Josiah did, we need to read God's word and follow his examples. I'm right with you. I wish I could do more and more and more of that. So, but here's what happened. After the book of the law was read, now again, there's a lot of words here, but the problem is the whole entire thing we're talking about today is very, very long. So I'm kind of cramming it down. So we're a little bit of word, and then we're going to do some bullet points of what he did. So this is what Josiah did. Now, By the way, I want you to pay close attention to what he destroyed, because this is how far they were into idolatry, how bad it was in Judah. You've got to think of it that way. Stand back, you look at Josiah, look at his reforms, and if you have to reform it, that means they were doing it. So all the bad stuff they were doing. So let's go into that. He removed from the temple where God is there, articles made for Baal and Ashtoreth. I thought that would got taken care of back in Judah. But nope. Israel. Nope. Got to remember, when Israel was taken captive, some people from Israel came down to Judah. Brought with them a lot of bad stuff. and stuff to the starry hosts. Basically, they worshiped astrology. They worshipped stars, astrology. Okay. Also the sun, the moon. Basically, by the way, if you want to know, the moon god of Assyria was Sin, S-I-N. Just that's a little FYI. It's true. Sin was the moon god of Assyria. So he burned them outside the fields. So basically, he took them in the fields and burned all these things. He did away with the idolatrous priests appointed by the kings of Judah to burn incense on the high places. So, by the way, if you're not understanding what we're talking about, the different idolatry, who Baal and Ashtoreth is, high places, please go back and watch the videos on polytheism, because this is the reason why I started with that lecture, because we're going to see polytheism really, really strongly throughout this. So, he did away with the idolatrous priests who built the high places, those who burned incense to Baal, the sun and the moon we just talked about, to the constellations and the starry hosts. All right. That's a lot. That's not it. There's more. He took the Asherah poles, ground it up. He also tore down the quarters of the male shrine prostitutes. Okay, guys. Now, think about it. Only men are allowed to go into the temple. And by the way, the word prostitute in Hebrew means dog. So you can get whatever you want out of that. But the key is, guys, these guys weren't there for something good. Most likely homosexuality, which usually is what happens in kingdoms that really go down far. That's what usually happens. But Josiah brought all the priests from the towns of Judah and desecrated the high places. He desecrated Tebeth, which was found, so no one could use it to sacrifice their son or daughter in the fire to Moloch. Now, just remember, the king did it. How many people did it? Probably a lot, because it was there and he had to get rid of it. So this wasn't just a one-time thing. These people were actively murdering their children to Moloch. Then he burned the chariots dedicated to the sun. They had chariots that they fought in war. They were dedicated to the sun god. They desecrated the high places. And here's the interesting thing is, listen what it says. Hill of corruption, the ones Solomon, king of Israel, built. By the way, this is approximately around 620 BC. Solomon built those in around 950. No one got rid of them for over 300 years. Even Hezekiah didn't do it. Think about it. He got rid of the thing that Solomon built. They were still there. Guys, one thing I want you to understand from all this, Israel didn't just start as this great nation, wonderful, godly, and just slowly just got worse. No, it was always a problem. People were always doing this stuff. You can't just walk in and just, all this bad stuff doesn't happen. It's been going on for years. Interesting thing that I always do is I like to look historically. In the book City of God by Augustine, he says that, you can see the morality of the people through their entertainment industry, or what he called the theater, because that's what the theater was in Rome. So listen to the entertainment of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. You're going to find that it was not that great. It's been going on for a very long time. Okay. So he got rid of Ashtoreth, the vile goddess of the Sidonians. Sidonian, basically, Ashtoreth and Baal was from Tyre and Sidon. From Shemus, which is a Moabite god. Despicable god of Moab, which I just said is. And Molech, god of the people of Ammon, covered the sites with human bones. Put human bones there, gods have to go away. That was the idea. It was a polytheism thing. Get rid of the gods by putting human bones on it, because you're now desecrating it. Furthermore, he got rid of the mediums and spiritualists. Remember, they had those for a long time. Remember what happened with Saul. Saul was in battle. Saul says, hey, I need to get some advice. So he goes to his friend, these people around him, and he says, I need a spiritualist. Oh, sir, but you got rid of all of them. And he goes, yeah, but where is one? Oh, it's right down the street there. They knew. Because they lived there. It was there. They didn't get rid of it. They knew exactly where they were. So the thing is, this stuff has been going on. And remember, Saul is over 400 years ago. So, the household gods and idols and other detestable things in Judah. That's a lot. I mean, that's how bad it was. Just think if God would come to America right now and all the things going on, he'd be throwing this out, this out, this out, this out. That'd be crazy. So, but it's interesting because God already prophesied, and we did this in the very first class when we talked about the prophets. When Ahijah and the unknown prophet basically came, this is what it was said. And a word about God came to the unknown prophet. He said, altar, altar, this is what the Lord says. A son named Josiah will be born to the house of David. So basically what was happening is Rehoboam was actually sacrificing things on the altar. Rehoboam was the first Israeli king. And the guy comes and says, okay, this is what's going to happen. Down the road, a guy named Josiah is going to come in and take it all out. And we just seen he did that. That's exactly everything God says, it happens. And then look what it says: that he will sacrifice the priests of the high places, which he did, who make burnt offerings, and put human bones will be burned on you. Basically, they burned human bones on top of it. It desecrates it, meaning that was their idea of saying we're going to get rid of this. So, in all of that, Josiah was doing a good thing. Okay? So this was actually 13 years he did this. From the time he started it was till the time he died, 13 years. He was in his 30s when this guy shows up. Remember, if you read the paper from last week on Assyria was going down, Israel's going down, things are not looking good. So what happened is Egypt decides, we're coming back. Hey, we got a free reign now. I got all these places up there we can go take out. Because what was happening, the Babylonians were coming and destroying the Assyrians. So Egypt says, good, now I can come. Woo. That's what this dude did, Pharaoh Necho. So what happened is he was moving up, and he was actually going north, trying to take over all of the Levant, which is all of Canaan. Necho was doing that at that point. So what happened is that Necho was coming up with his army. Josiah went out to meet him and says, you can't go through our territory. Not a good decision, because this guy was pretty big and had a good size army. And he says, what quarrel do you have with me, Judah? It's not me. I'm not attacking you. But but basically I'm at war with the Babylonians. That's where he was actually going after. God has told me to hurry, so stop opposing God who is with me, or he will destroy you. Now, it's interesting because in the end, it's exactly what happened. So you've got to wonder, maybe God was telling him to do that. But we're going to see here in a second why God had Egypt go up north. There was a reason. So consequently, Josiah in the Battle of Megiddo got rid of He basically got rid of all that stuff, and he went and fought him, and then, bam, he got killed. Josiah gets killed. 13 years of good stuff going on, and he gets killed. Okay? He was shot, taken out, and basically Jeremiah, who was alive then, wrote lamentations about him. So basically wrote some words about him. A lot of good stuff. So over the next few years after that, Egypt literally ran Judah. Took him over. Put a new king in, say, hey, I want this guy. So not only did they lose Josiah, not only did all the stuff that Josiah did go down with the flames with him, but now we have Egypt running everything. But again, I think that what Pharaoh Necho did and said to Josiah was true. I think God did want him to do this, and let me show you why. So, Judah went from good king, revival, to losing its good king, and occupation by Egypt. Okay? What we're going to see is that in about 4 years from this point, Babylon is going to decimate Egypt. And guess who's never coming back? Egypt's never coming back from this. Egypt was going down. So yes, I believe God did tell them to go up there. Because guess what? They never came back and bothered Judah ever again. Ever. Ever. By the way, they actually helped Judah a little bit during the Ptolemies in the intertestamental period, but that's another story. So, here we have Habakkuk saying, I mean, think about it. You look like everything is gone. All the good stuff is like, and guess what? You know for a fact, all the bad people were waiting for him to die because they want to come right back and do this, and that's exactly what happened. They want to right back into it. Just like in our country today, you just can't get rid of some of this stuff. So he says, I call out to you, but you do not listen. He said, why do you make me look at injustice? Why am I watching all this? Why are you doing all of this, God? And we're kind of short on time, so I'm not going to go keep reading into it. But trust me, read Habakkuk and see what he was saying to God. God, what are you doing? What's the problem? Why did you? This was good. You were doing good things. He was doing good things. Why did all this stuff fall to pieces? But the interesting thing is, God's answer will blow your brains out. God said, look at the nations and watch. Be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something today that you won't even believe. I'm bringing the Babylonians here. You're what? Let me turn my hearing up here. What'd you say, God? I'm bringing the Babylonians in. Well, isn't those the guys that kind of wiped out Assyria and did bad things to them? Yep. That's the idea. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law to themselves. And then, so Habakkuk goes back to God. It's like, all right. You just said you're bringing the Babylonians in. What's the problem here? God said to him, he says to the Lord, my God, my Holy One, you'll never die. He goes, you have ordained them to punish. Your eyes are too pure to be evil. Basically, Habakkuk says, go, Lord, you're going to punish your people through those people. They're evil. And God says, yeah, that's the point. That's the point. And he's going to say, why are you silent when the wicked swallow up the righteous? Basically, there are still good people around, God. Why are you going to wipe them out too? And that's exactly what was happening. They were going down. Judah was going down. And sadly, what the hardest thing to accept, and I'm going to tell you, I have struggled so much with this idea, is that the hardest thing to accept is sometimes the place that you're living is so bad that even the righteous get affected in a negative way by it. Not necessarily they don't turn to it, but they get affected by the repercussions of it. And that's sometimes really hard to understand. We would think God wants to save everybody and everything's good, and that's not always the case. So he said, I will stand at my watch, my station. I will look and see what you will say to me. Please answer me. What is your problem? Why are you doing this, God? He said. Then the Lord says, write down the revelation, make it plain on tablets, that the herald may run with. Basically, tell the people, this is what's going to happen. For the revelation waits for its appointed time, which means Babylon's coming. I don't care what you say. He's coming. They're coming. Though it lingers, please wait for it will certainly come. Meaning, hey guys, Babylon's on its way. I don't care what you can do whatever you want, but it's coming regardless. And don't think it's not going to come, because this was about 609. Okay? We're going to see next week, when we go through Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, that within 4 years, Babylon came in, did this first bad thing to them. And it kept getting worse after that. Isn't that interesting? You know, he's saying, God, but what about the righteous? So then goes into, and if you want to, I'm not going to go into all of it, because the thing is, God said, this is what's going to happen to them. This is the people that are going to come after you. I mean, he went to great detail. You got to remember, God was doing this not just telling Habakkuk. Because Habakkuk was a prophet. He was going to tell the people this. It wasn't just for Habakkuk, it was for everybody. They had to learn. Okay, so I recommend reading that. Sorry, we're a little short on time today. Then Habakkuk prays. Lord, I've heard about your fame. You are wonderful. Look at all the stuff you've done. I mean, gosh, go back to Exodus and read it. If you read Exodus, you're going to see a lot about God's fame. And he says, repeat them in our day. Can't you do that stuff like you did in Exodus? But look what he says afterwards. In wrath, remember mercy. God, even though you're going to do this, please remember mercy. Basically what he's saying is, Lord, let your will be done. Now guys, you got to remember, one of the things God has to do is he has to break things down so he can reform it into something good. And today I'm having a really hard day, because that's what God's doing to me right now. Breaking me down, and it's been really, really tough, and I'm having just a terrible day, so. Anyway, but the thing is, that's the point. God has to break things down. Case in point, I'm from Colorado. You guys probably know that. In Yellowstone, about 25 years ago, there was a huge fire that devastated. Yellowstone's gorgeous. I remember seeing it as a kid. It was beautiful. It was fire, destroyed everything. 10 years later, I saw this picture on the newspaper saying, this is Yellowstone today. More beautiful than ever before, because everything came back better. That's the idea. And so he makes me like the feet of deer, enables me to tread on the heights. By the way, I've read this book like 7 times, one of my favorite books. Love that book. That's actually where they get that verse from, is from Habakkuk. So basically, our sin affects things. Israel says, but your iniquities have separated you from God. Your sins have hidden you from his face. Thing is, the people's sins did that. Now again, remember, but what about the righteous God? Well, unfortunately, they're going to have to go through it too, but guys, think about this. Who do you think is going to be helping the people when everything falls to pieces? Got to have some righteous people in there. And that's what we're going to see next week with Ezekiel, Daniel, and Jeremiah. Because in the midst of all the problems, those 3 guys literally did more things than it blows my brains out. I can't even believe how much God was doing. And I've been looking forward to next week's lecture since the very beginning, because wait till you hear it. Wait till you hear what God does with those 3 guys and how he does it all together. It is amazing. So let's talk Zephaniah. We're almost done. Zephaniah. Basically, Zephaniah was just along with Habakkuk. He was a contemporary. But God, this is what God says to Zephaniah. So basically, Habakkuk, I have a feeling Habakkuk came first and said, hey, here comes Babylon. Then Zephaniah comes in and says, all right, this is how he's going to do it. I will stretch out my hand against Judah. I will destroy the remnant, Baal worship, idolatrous priests, those who bow down to the roof's starry hosts. Wait a minute. This was after Josiah, and he's saying this. They brought it all back. It all came back. It all came back. At that time, God says, I will search Jerusalem with lamps, punish those who are complacent. Basically, I'm going to go find all the people out there that are not doing what they're supposed to do with me. Their wealth will be plundered, their houses demolished. They will build houses, but they won't live in them. This is God saying it's going to come. Wait till we go through Jeremiah. You're going to see God says, hey guys, no matter what you do, this is not going to end. I don't care how much you pray at this point. Next week we're going to get into that. When God will say, I don't care how much you pray. The best thing to do, surrender, go to the Babylonians, and they'll save your life. City is gone. God said that in Jeremiah. Just wait. So, who was the problem? Well, who were the problem that God was talking about? Well, Zephaniah says, woe to the city of oppressors, rebellious and defiled. She obeys no one. She does. Her officials within her. Her rulers, evening wolves. Her prophets, unprincipled. Her priests, profane. That pretty much gets all the hierarchy. You got the church. You got those who are preaching the word, the guys on TV preaching the word. Then you've got the leaders. It just went across everybody. Then he goes on to saying, it's one of the things you're going to find, and again, we're just about finished. One of the things we're going to find in the end that God says it's not just going to happen to Jerusalem. Because when the Babylonians come in, it's going to affect everybody. And it's going to go for all the way from Syria to Cush. And if you remember where Cush is, it's below Egypt. That's a long way away. Those guys are going to affect all of those guys too. So what God does is God brought judgment. And Jeremiah says, I will summon all the people from the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar. I will bring them to the land, and they will destroy it. Okay? And that's what happened. But the interesting thing is, at the end of Zephaniah, God talks about his restoration. And this is what God does. So remember, guys, he has to break things down to bring people back and make them. Trust me, when you go through really hard times, it humbles you. And let me tell you, all you want to do is just, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So basically what's going to happen, God says, hey, you guys are going to take this away. They're going to take you guys away, but in 70 years, you're coming back. And that's what we're going to do in the very last week. Our last class is going to be about that. And what's interesting is this. I love this. Shout aloud, be glad and rejoice. God has turned back your enemy. He destroys the Babylonians. But look at what happens. And this is what's interesting. Remember that God breaks it down to build it up again? The Lord, the King of Israel. Now, if you guys ever study the kings from the very beginning, remember what Samuel says. The people said, we want a king. Samuel says, well, God, what's wrong with you being king? They got kings, and this is what happened to them. But look what happens here. The Lord, the King of Israel, is with you. The King of Israel. By the way, just so you know, once the kings leave in 586, they ain't ever coming back. They do not have kings anymore. Now, granted, they will 300 years later during the Maccabee, but that was only a short period of time. So basically what God says is true. He becomes their king for a while. And that's what he wanted from the very beginning. So basically, what he did is destroyed them just to bring them back and bring them to a place where they needed to be. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to go over Daniel, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And with all of that, buckle up, because you're going to see that God is doing multiple things in multiple places at the same exact time. All these prophets lived exactly at the same time, but all lived in places far away from each other. But God was actively going, and I'm going to piece you guys together with that and show you guys how God did this whole humongous thing and showed himself to protect his people, to bring his people back. It was all about Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel is all about bringing the people back into the land and what God's going to do. Any questions? Sorry for being too late. So, all right, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good class.
Thank you.
Joel might know
Yeah, you might know this clown.
the instrument, but I don't know if he recognizes the clown.
Yes. Yes. He has that short. So, he just had a memorial with my grandmother. Those were one of them. That was a pair that my grandmother made.
Jeff says he really hasn't changed.
Yeah. Oh, that did you say that too?
We haven't seen him yet.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Dad had all kind of pictures. And when he ever shows them to people, he ever said, and if you look at these pictures close, you'll see the man never had hair.
That's hilarious.
And of course, when they'd be joking, Dad would always tell him, I have pictures to prove I have hair.
Yeah, that's definitely a clown. He hasn't changed. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we'll get some mileage out of it here at Limousin.
Your mom just looked at him and, oh my God.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe because nobody duplicates these kids. A lot of pictures of the youth group. I don't know. We have a whole bunch when these guys went down to see Mom before she passed away.
I remember her growing
Surgeons
up.
and stuff. Yeah.
She kept everybody in mind.
That's a lot of